Okay, hello. Today we're gonna be looking at Rome in DuckMod, and I'm gonna go through the units and the changes I've done to Rome, more or less in detail. So let's start with the Roman generals. And a big change that I've done is I've increased the health of the Roman generals by quite a lot. So well, it just means that they're not as vulnerable as they are in the main game. So overall, they're a pretty sturdy unit for their size. Now let's move on to melee infantry. As you might see, Rome has a lot of melee infantry, and I think sort of the biggest change I've done is I've completely removed formation attack, so you cannot really even make the mistake of putting it on or leaving it on. And I've also added shield wall to Roman units. And as you can see from the shield wall, it's 200% more bracing, or 200% bracing bonus and 50% shield melee defense, while limiting the unit speed and melee attack. So it's as an ability, it's mostly useful for cheaper Roman infantry with low melee attack and a good shield bonus, like the Hastati. I've also tried to make each Roman unit cost effective and sort of unique. So the Sosi Hastati, well, they're your regular fodder unit in a sense. I mean, they're more or less light infantry. They'll buy you time, but that's about it. The Hastati they have 35 melee attack and 59 melee defense. Not that much armor, 45 morale. But they're basically what you want to use for if you just want to buy time. Put them in a shield wall, and they'll hold for quite a while, especially if you bolster morale by general being around. Then we have the 600 cost unit range, and here we have the legionaries with 48 melee attack and 55 defense and 65 armor. They're more or less interchangeable with the legionary cohorts, who have slightly less attack but more armor instead. And then we have at 630 the Principes, who have a really good melee defense, so they're sitting at 62 melee defense, out of which 45 is actually from their shields. So in a shield wall, this is a unit that will reach something like 85 melee defense, so they're really good at holding the enemy. But they probably won't be doing as much damage as some other units might due to their low armor piercing damage. And at 640 we have the Sosi Extraordinary, and they're a bit closer. I think they're sort of a mix of a barbarian and a hoplite unit dashed into a sword unit. They have great armor, pretty good defense, and okay melee attack, and for a Roman unit pretty good charge bonus as well, combined with a good morale. So they're a good unit for just, well, I think they're one of the best Roman units for facing ranged units due to their high armor and cheap cost. Then we have the gladiators, whose price I've raised. They're more or less pretty similar to what they used to be, so they're a very powerful unit, but they don't have much in terms of charge or armor, so I guess barbarian infantry, for example, they'll be struggling. And at 700 we have the veteran legionaries, and overall there's a sort of a mix between the 700 unit types, meaning the veteran legionnaires, the armor legionnaires, and evocati. I'd say that the veteran legionaries are probably the most cost effective ones. They have 53 melee attack and 56 defense and 65 armor. While the armored legionaries cost 50 more, and they gain +2 defense and 15 armor. So a very sturdy unit. But you could raise the question whether they're better, more effective than the veteran legionaries. And you also have the choice of bringing the Evocati cohort, which have 2 more melee attack and 2 more melee defense, but 5 less armor. So for Roman mainstay, I think these 3 units are what you want to use. Then we have the first cohort and the Eagle cohort. The prices have changed a bit, and overall the Eagle cohorts are actually the first cohorts. They're in a sense almost identical to the veteran legionaries, but they have more morale, and most importantly they have an encourage aura. So, and the Eagle cohorts are, they're Evocati, yeah, they're more or less identical with the Evocati, except they have slightly higher base morale, and they have the encourage aura. And at the top of the rank we have the Praetorian Guard, which are one of the most powerful units in the game. So, great melee attack, great melee defense, great armor and great morale. Their only real weakness is a lack of charge bonus, but this of course can be offset by using a shield wall. And then we come to Spear Infantry. I haven't changed too much regarding the Spear Infantry. The only real changes is that the Auxiliary Infantry now have cavalry counter tactics. So they're pretty effective in a counter cav role, and I've raised the cost of the Gladiator Spearmen. And as to Missile Infantry, they're more or less the same. I've just increased the price of Auxiliary Balearic Slingers, and I've given them a working shield, because previously they didn't have a shield in patch 7. For the Shock Cavalry, I've raised the cost of Soci Equitus Extraordinary, but they're still a very good flanking unit, but they're not as cost effective as they used to be. And overall I've raised the cost of nearly all Roman cavalry, so they're good, but they're quite expensive. And I think especially the Auxiliary Cavalry and the Praetorian Cavalry will hold their own in most battles. But you'll have to pay a bit more for them than previously. Then we have the Auxiliary Numidian Cavalry, and the big change regarding them is I've slightly increased their melee attack, so they're actually useful for flanking, and more importantly they now have a parting shot, so they can shoot backwards while running away. So this makes them a very useful tool against shock cavalry who don't have a shield. And then we have the Auxiliary African Elephants. They're quite a bit more expensive. They're not nearly as effective as they were in patch 7, but they'll tear apart cavalry and sword infantry, especially if those units are not braced. So, and of course they have the scare factor as well, so they're a handy unit but a bit risky. And as to the field artillery, I've decreased the rate of fire for all artillery, so they're viable if your opponent is camping, but beyond that you're not going to be getting enough shots to make them really useful. The Scorpions and Polyball, well, the Scorpion might be useful, but that's about it. And to finish this off, I'll just show you how the shield wall affects the Romans in terms of stats. And overall, Rome is a faction that has great infantry, but it's sort of lacking in shock infantry, so you can't really expect the Roman infantry to do very well on a charge. Um, the shield wall, it looks really cool, as you can see. Uh, as you see, it also reduces the Roman attack quite heavily, but it makes them a lot sturdier in defense, so I guess some heavy shock troops is probably the best option for Rome, provided that you can actually get the enemy to charge you. And overall, Rome has cost-effective infantry combined with a good selection of skirmishers and elephants and some pretty potent elite cavalry. So overall, I think Rome just needs to rely on getting their effective infantry to do the job and sticking around in the battle longer than the opponent. That's basically it. But I hope you enjoyed Rome in my mod, and do give me feedback on how Rome works. Thank you. Goodbye.